To the Easthampton City Council meeting of September 4th. Can I have the roll call, please?
Ted Coniff. Here. Salem Derby.
Present.
Omar Gomez.
Here.
JP Kaczynski.
Here.
Bill Lynch.
Here.
Joe McCoy. Tom Peak.
Here.
Dan Rist.
Here.
Owen Zaret.
Present.
Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looks like we have some minutes to approve from August 7th.
Move to approve.
There is an error in the minutes.
Well,
Okay.
we need a second and then we
Okay, second, and then I'll tell you what I on the part where we're talking about the wage theft on page 3, there's a line in there that says Councilor Gomez suggested changing references of minorities, people of color. It's actually the opposite. People of color to minorities.
That's what I thought.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for pointing that out. I was confused. You make a motion to amend.
Motion to amend with
Second.
that new wording.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend.
Good catch.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay, back to the original motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'm going to abstain because I was not here. So now is public speak time. If anybody is here to speak to anything that is not in our public hearings or on our agenda, you can come up to the podium now. Seeing none. Communications from elected boards and officials, committees. It looks like we have something from Parks and Rec.
John Payson, Parks and Recreation Director. I submitted a memo on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Commission to convene a 5-member panel to rename the Section 3 walkway at Nonotuck Park to the Ben Campbell Memorial Walkway. I know at this point we can't name it yet, but that's what we're interested in doing. So we're asking that a 5-member panel be convened for that. I don't know if you want me to talk about Ben Campbell quick or
Sure.
what brought this upon. Little League, along with some other local residents and baseball folks. Ben Campbell died tragically in April. He was a Maine state trooper who grew up in Easthampton, played Little League, and was on the state championship team. He also played Legion Ball. I didn't know him, but I've talked to so many folks. There's not one person that can say a bad word about him. Died in the line of duty, trying to help someone. So it's a tragedy. So we're looking to do something to honor his memory in the Little League section. So that's why we're asking for this request.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilor Rist.
As I recall, the naming ordinance, the president names the committee. So if you have names that you think might be willing, send them to
Okay.
President McCoy, I think.
And we have to make an
I'll
ad hoc. Do we have to do an ad hoc committee for
It
it?
is, yeah.
Yeah,
I'll post it tomorrow,
for each
10
one.
days.
Yep.
And do we need to make a motion to form the ad hoc committee? Or are we?
Probably
Sure.
would be a
Okay,
good idea.
so I'd entertain a motion
I move
to.
to form an ad hoc committee for the naming of
Okay.
Ben Campbell Way or whatever.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Correspondence. Yeah.
Councilor Zaret also had a thing.
Councilor Peak.
Sure. So the Charter Review Committee is going to be holding a public hearing a week from today, Wednesday the 11th.
Charter Review?
No, not Charter Review.
I was going to say, I didn't know about this.
I'm sorry, I'm in a lot of panels. It'll be the Telecommunication Advisory. Oh man, I'm off to a great start tonight. Yeah, the Telecommunication Advisory Committee will be holding a public hearing in these chambers a week from today. We're going to present on the last year of work that we've done, the research that we've conducted, and we're also going to present the results of a fairly well responded to survey that we put out this summer, and then hold a public hearing for any member of the public to weigh in on what they feel are the sort of broadband needs of the city, and anything that we get from that will be part of our eventual report to the mayor. So I would encourage members of the public and councilors to attend.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Peak.
Do we have a time on it?
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
I think.
And here?
I think.
What day?
What day?
Wednesday.
Next Wednesday,
Yeah.
the 11th.
He thinks.
So it'll be the 11th?
Yes, it's definitely the 11th. That's the one thing I'm very sure.
Okay, Councilor Zaret.
Thank you, Acting President.
Man, just an actor.
And Councilor Peak, thank you so much for your work on that. I mean, I'm very excited to see that project come to fruition. Just a reminder to everyone that there are 2 more of the 4 concerts at Mill Pond Live coming up this Saturday, and the next, the last being Irish Fest. It's a great event organized by Loudover Productions, who does a lot of musical events around the city, so consider coming on out. There's a couple other ancillary events associated with that too over the next couple of weeks. One is a cleanup around the pond, organized in cooperation with the Connecticut River Conservatory. That's this Saturday at 9 o'clock down at Millside Park. Also, one of our residents, Lindsay Rothschild, has organized in cooperation with Laudable a committee fair highlighting all the great committees in our city. And as many of you know, we have many volunteers in our city who run a lot of these committees. For instance, the telecom committee that Councilor Peak just mentioned, the lifeblood of our city is volunteers. And so we talk a lot about people getting engaged. There's an opportunity to learn about the individual committees and how to get involved. So that's the 14th from 4 to 6. And then just a reminder to everyone that I see the superintendent here. Kids are back in school, so keep your eyes on the road and watch out for our lovely crossing guards and kids getting on and off buses, and be safe. So that's all.
Okay. Councilor Gomez. Yes, I did do public speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say the Bahamas is in our heart. After the hurricane hit those islands, that put in my head what happened in Puerto Rico a couple years ago. So I want to say that, and I want to clarify something about the President Donald Trump. Every time that he's talking about Puerto Rico, the place that I grew up, about the numbers, that he's lying. Every time that he's saying the Congress approved over 90-something billion is a lie. The Congress only approved a little bit over 42 billion, and the island of Puerto Rico only received a little bit over 13 billion after that disaster. So I just want to put that clear, because we all pay federal taxes, and I just want to say that that's the facts. I'm not bringing any numbers there, not there to prove that that's what it is. And again, after the disaster in Bahama, they are in our hearts, and I feel sorry for them.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah.
Any other councilors? Okay. Mayor Communications. Mayor LaChapelle.
I just very brief tonight around the ballot questions that we're looking out of charter to get. They still are in the Senate Council's office, trying to get another update from Senator Hummison's office, and been in contact with Representative Carey just about how to move that up. Talking to Barbara today, we are getting very close to the deadline that is much closer to the middle of September than the final deadline of October 1st. So I just wanted to update folks on that. And that's...
Councilor Rest.
Thank you. I just got a text from Councilor Carey. He's pushing them to get it out of the Senate. What this means, which I was going to report later, but since the mayor brought it up, we may need to have a special meeting somewhere around the 25th of September for the sole purpose of approving the ballot. because we absolutely, by law, 35 days before the election, have to have the ballot approved by the local legislator, and that's October 1st. And our next meeting is October 4th, is it, Barbara? I think it's around there. October 2nd. So we have to have a meeting prior to October 1st. So that's how tight this is. So we have to get
it's
it
very
out
tight.
before the 25th so that we could vote on it. So I'm just telling everybody, please keep that date open. I'm not optimistic we're going to get it before the 18th, which is our next meeting. So if we have to, we'll have a quick meeting to approve the ballot, but we have to do it.
So, I would encourage folks to call Senator Humison's office, both in district and also in Boston, to underscore the urgency. I did affirm with the Secretary of State Elections Office and also with Barbara that the questions that we have sent for review and to the legislature and finally for the governor's signature are 3 different issues. Right now, the change in mayor's term has in effect come back from the election committee without comment, and the language is fine. And a lot of cities have done that, so the language looks the same. The ranked choice voting, there's some clarifications that election gave to Senate Council, so that's just where we are. And Councilor Peak and I spoke earlier today about encouraging folks to call the Senator. I agree, Councilor Rist, it is super, super tight on those 2, the ranked choice voting ballot questions timeline. I'm concerned, and I'm concerned about the mayor. We talked about the governor's signature in the 10 days, and if he does nothing, then it automatically is okay, but that's still 10 days. So, yes.
I just want to let council know that Barbara warned me about this, and Barbara is all-knowing. So just so you all know, when Barbara has some guidance, we should listen. We couldn't change anything. Yeah, okay, but...
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor.
That's all I have.
Thank you. And I'm going to exercise my right as a president to move our report of standing committees around, and I'm going to start with property. Councilor Kwasinski, and I think if we could start with the conservation restriction, we might be able to start the public hearing on time.
Excellent.
But we might have to interrupt you mid-report.
We did have a meeting. We discussed the matter. I can be very brief. We voted in favor unanimously to recommend the conservation restrictions for the East Street Park grant acquisition. We did have Jeff Bagg here, and I would appreciate if he would just give a quick, maybe a 1-minute thumbnail if we're going to go for the 6:15 deadline here. But I know it took about 10 or 12 or 15 minutes the last time. But essentially, we're swapping conservation restrictions on 2 separate parcels of land, one owned by the city and one owned by Kestrel.
Great, thank you for having me. I'm Jeff Bagg, I'm the city planner here in Easthampton, and I'm here with Mark Walmsley from Kestrel Land Trust to potentially answer any questions. But where we are is in the final stages of acquisition of 23 acres on the side of East Street adjacent to Mount Tom. We got gracious funding from the Community Preservation Act committee, combined with a $400,000 park grant, and Kestrel also received an $85,000 conservation partnership grant from the state, all of which was combined, and there was funds from Pascomic Conservation Trust. So this project is a true partnership, and we're really proud of it. It's going to be an exciting project to watch unfold in the coming years. We closed on the property at the end of June, and that was an expedited process with the state. We had originally set forth to close this fall, so we were aiming for the end of September. Learning that Kestrel didn't originally get the $85,000 grant, we had spent some time trying to fill that gap and discussing how that gap might get filled. And in that process, in early May, the state came back and said if we could close in the last fiscal year before June 30th, then they could actually, so the project must have fallen out of queue, And if we could close before June 30th, then Kestrel could be awarded the $85,000 grant. So through a really concerted effort with Kestrel, the planning department, we had the Michael Owens in the treasurer's office was helping. So we had all hands on deck. The city attorney put together all the documents necessary for closing. So we are now have acquired the 23 acres in partnership with Kestrel, and what we are doing now is finishing up the conservation restriction process with the state. So as Councilor Kwasinski said, the city can't hold its own conservation restriction. So the two properties are side by side. The city is conveying our CR to Kestrel, and Kestrel is conveying their conservation restriction to the city. So the Conservation Commission has reviewed both and has signed off. The process involves then the signatures of the city council president, acknowledging that the city council voted to accept this. The mayor signs off on the document, and then we ship it back to the state, and we'll have completed all the steps necessary for the full acquisition. So the council members have the full CR documentation in the packets, and looking for an endorsement of that, and there's 2 motions for that.
I'd be happy to make the motions, or if there are any questions for anyone here. Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks.
I move to convey the conservation restriction CR reference number 16,710 and CR number Easthampton number 13 from the city of Easthampton to Kestrel Land Trust in perpetuity and exclusively for conservation purposes on the entirety of a 12.15 acre parcel of land described as Parcel C on a plan recorded in the Hampshire County Registry of Deeds in Book 244, Plan 86.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
I have a question. Only because I was reading something as you were saying it, and you said Plan 86, and this paperwork says Plan 87.
2 separate motions, 2 separate
Okay, I was too
conservation
far down the
restrictions.
paragraph.
That's right.
Okay.
I
But you
retract my
may have
raising
caught
of my
another
hand.
one, almost.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. In the second.
The other motion, I move to accept the conservation restriction, CR reference number 16,711, and CR number Easthampton 14, from Kestrel Land Trust to the city of Easthampton in perpetuity and exclusively for conservation purposes on the entirety of the 10.577 acre parcel of land described as Parcel D on a plan recorded in the Hampshire County Registry of Deeds in Book 244, Plan 87.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I can say before I vote on this that I hope I get to sign this document as acting president, because this is exciting. I
This
think
is
this
very
great.
exciting.
So I'm very happy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, I move the public hearings be opened.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to open the public hearings. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are open, and we'll start with where we left off, and I will also start by apologizing for not being at the last 2 meetings, so it was unavoidable, and I am here now, and I want to start.
So happy.
I'm so glad that you are happy that I'm here. So the first one that we have here is the zoning ordinance amendment cannabis equity applications, which is continued from the 7th. And after discussion at committee level and discussion with Councilor Zaret, who put this forward, it looks like we are going to continue this again pending further solicitor review. But I think that as people might have come out to discuss this, I'd be happy to open up this to public comment before we continue it. And Councilor Zaret, would you like to make any statements before we move on? Or just where we're at with it, or?
Right, absolutely. So we received the opinion back from the solicitor. There were some questions around transferability of special permits, as well as looking at making sure that our language that we're using is in line with state language for the purpose of consistency, as well as really looking at the equity groups as well. Those were, I think, the biggest things. As Attorney Tanner was very thorough. But basically, this brought up the need to have some ongoing conversations both with the our solicitor as well as the CCC, just to make sure that the language we're using is appropriate and doesn't create any conflicts with what's being used at the state level. So.
Thank you. Any counselor comments before I open it up to the public? Okay, anybody from the public have anything to say before we make a motion to continue this? Okay, seeing none, I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
I move we continue the public hearing on zoning ordinance amendment cannabis equity applications.
Okay, so we have a motion to continue the hearing on the cannabis equity applications to the September 18th meeting at 6:15 in these chambers. Second.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Motion
Abstain.
passes. Abstain? One abstention. And again, it falls to me. So we have another ordinance amendment, which is wage theft ordinance, which is also continued. And we're in the same boat where we are awaiting some city solicitor feedback. I think we're still waiting on some potentially language issues. So this is another one that we're going to look to continue to the 18th. Councilor Zaret, do you want to give us an update on this as well?
Absolutely, Councilor Derby. I met with the solicitor and the mayor and Council President McCoy yesterday. We reviewed some of the solicitor's comments. I'm trying to remember the particular issues. I can pull up my notes. Some of it, again, had to do with language. Basically, that some of the language that was contained in the ordinance was not quite in parallel to the language that's used by the state, and so we'd like to tighten that up. There were some issues as well about where there could be conflicts between creating an ordinance that uses legislative power to influence executive power, and so potential conflict of separation of powers. There was a very brief discussion, again, just around the wording, around the diversity requirements, but nothing too complicated, but more so looking to make that more guidelines as opposed to firm quotas. I think that was the biggest thing. I'm going to have some ongoing conversations with hopefully both the mayor and the solicitor, as well as reach out to the carpenters and try to work some of this language out so that we have an ordinance that is as stable as possible, stand up to scrutiny. I wouldn't want to bring anything to a vote that isn't as airtight as we can make it. So.
Thank you, Councilor Zaret. So again, any councilors have any comments? Opening it up to the public. If anybody from the public has anything to say before we continue this again to the 18th. Okay, I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
Move that we continue the city ordinance amendment wage theft ordinance to the 18th of this month.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to continue the wage theft ordinance to September 18th at 6:15 in these chambers. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or noes? Okay, motion passes. And that brings us to supplemental appropriations. And I believe that brings us to Councilor Rist.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We have before us three Community Preservation Act appropriations, all of which were approved unanimously by the CPA committee. The first one up is the city space request for netting and roof repairs and restoration. The netting is to protect our persons using the city hall from getting hit in the head with debris. It is urgent in that if you all got a look at, I sent to you the major report, and there are pictures of really large pieces of stone that can fall. And I gave this document to all of you, which shows you where the netting would be placed. This was part of the application process. As you all recall, City Space, the organization that has leased the building, is responsible for all restoration and maintenance of the building. CPA funded a major facade study from GNCB Engineers, which is the study I'm referring to. That study indicated there is a two-phase project that will cost nearly $1 million in the end to deal with, knowing that that funding will take some time to gather, hopefully through the state earmarks. We needed to protect the building and the persons using the building with this netting. Although it is leased, the city still owns the building. So the liability, the lawyers would find us if somebody got hit in the head. And that's why I was worried about the urgency of this. Some of them are baseball size and even larger pieces. I believe former Mayor Tosnick is here, and Burns Maxey, the City Space president, can speak to this, but there has been some debris noticed that has fallen of that size. Along with the application for the netting is a roof repair, the slate. We own some of the slate, which was nice to hear. This is the slate that's currently stored there, so we don't have to pay for the slate. And they found a contractor willing to do this for remarkably inexpensively. But he's completely bonded. We were all worried because it was so cheap that it would be, that maybe the guy was just the guy out down the road coming up and said, I'll fix it. But really, no, and City Space did their due diligence on both of these projects, going out to bid and getting the best price. So I'm happy to report that they've presented this to us with a lot of research. The city attorney got involved in this because we were concerned, our city planning department, Jamie, the person responsible for CPA legislation and making sure we're compliant, was concerned that the netting might be considered not compliant with the legislation, in that it might be separated out and therefore could be considered quote-unquote maintenance and not part of the restoration process. But to make a long story short, the city attorney, with as thorough as he usually is, gave us a report back that it is indeed part of the first phase of the project, and it is perfectly fine for us, the CPA, to fund this project, which we are very happy with, because otherwise we'd have to use city funds, which can be used for something else. CPA is restricted in that this is historic preservation, and that's what it can be used for, so we'd rather use these funds. So we're happy with that. As I said, the CPA unanimously approved this, and the Finance Committee approved it 3-0. And as I indicated, there are, Mayor Tosnick is here, and he has a sample of the netting, and Burns Maxey City Space, if they want to come up, if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Councilor Riss, for that detailed report. Thank you.
Good evening, councilors. I think Councilor Rist summarized it fairly well, but I thought you might be interested in seeing the material that we're proposing.
Thank you.
So after the engineers took a look at it, determined what was going on, historically we've had pieces, cell phone size pieces of brownstone fail and come off the face of the building. And so this is a combination net. It has a structural net, and then it has a smaller debris netting so that nothing large can possibly fall off the building. This will essentially cover the face of the old town hall, including the area above the steps on the portico. If you took a look at the report that Councilor Riss sent, or just walked by the building, you'd notice that there's a lot of brownstone that is sunken, and it didn't shrink, it fell off. And so after 150 years, it needs some TLC. As Councilor Riss said, the total project is upwards of $900,000+. We don't have the funding for that at this point, and so this will at least provide the safety necessary so that we can continue to use the building. There's been no identifying of any structural deficiencies or any problem that a slight delay will matter, but eventually it does need to be repaired.
Okay. Thank you. Questions? Any questions from the councilors? Okay, any comment from the public? Okay, seeing none, I guess we could entertain a motion.
Wow.
Yeah.
I move that the City Council approve the following appropriation. The amount requested is $18,050 to be appropriated from CPA Reserve for Historic Preservation, $18,050 to be appropriated to Old Town Hall facing restoration phase 1, safety netting and roof repair, $18,050. The amount requested for the following purpose: for the purchase and installation of safety netting on the facade and to conduct repairs on the slate roof of Old Town Hall.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I just
Any further
wanted
discussion?
to say this seemed like a no-brainer, as Councilor Rist had said, with regard to the roof repair. That just didn't, unbelievable price. And the netting, just it's so simple, we have to do it, so.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of some of the amounts of money that we appropriate here for things that seem like way smaller projects than this, it's pretty impressive, so.
Yeah. Look forward to it, yep.
Councilor Zaret.
Well, I was just going to say too, that building, I think, is part of a critical role in our development of the city with the proposal for city space and redeveloping the second floor. So I think, you know, we have to do everything we can if we have available funds to make sure that that building is successful.
Absolutely. Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Motion passes. Councilor Rist, back to you.
We have a second CPA appropriation unanimously approved by the CPA committee. This is for the Maple Street Playground request for accessible playground equipment. This accessibility is required because there has been a great, and I know the principal's here and then the superintendent can expound on this, we have a lot more special needs students attending our grade schools, especially Maple. These special needs students do not have access because of their disabilities to playground equipment. So they approached the CPA committee to get this equipment installed. Our first question, which is probably your first question, wait a minute, we're building a new building. This equipment can be and will be moved to the new playground at the school, and I have a question for the superintendent on that, which I forgot to ask. Or it will be moved to a playground such as in Nonotuck Park in the future. It will be installed, therefore, that it can be moved. So we're not wasting it, even though I don't think it's a waste even for 3 years of use, but it's still important to understand. It's about $5,000 to move it, and it seems like we should consider that in the future. But for now, if it is moved to the playground, I believe the costs will be absorbed by the new school's construction, which is my question for the superintendent. Finance committee approved this 3-0. So if I could ask you to come up and answer that question.
Please, no other questions. I'll bring them all to you.
Yeah, that's the... So my question, Allison, is number one, there is a playground being designed. I forgot to ask this, of course,
Yes.
of Bert
Yep.
in the school. So would this be something that would be moved there in your mind with the school building project?
Yes, this could be moved to that new playground area that will be at the new school in 3 years. Or, depending on how the current Maple School is used in the future after the 3 years, it could stay there and become something for the neighborhood, for that part of the community. Or, as you mentioned, it could be moved to another park in the community where children can access it.
Councilor Coniff.
Dr. Leclerc, if it's not moved, will the playground that is being constructed at the new school be ADA compliant?
Yes, obviously, we have to do that going forward with the entire building. But right, it will include playground equipment, but the challenge for us is that in the current state, we don't currently have ADA compliant playground equipment that I know of anywhere in Easthampton, and we have children that are unable to access playing at the same level that their peers are, and so we are not being equitable, and we're striving to be an equitable school district, and so we really feel for all children to have access to play. And it's not just children with special needs. This can be any child that struggles to use regular playground equipment for whatever reason, even a broken leg or something like that. So it's really for all of our children to have access now.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Peak.
I'm just kind of curious, what sort of equipment, what does this actually end up looking like?
I'm going to defer to, I have my special friends with me. I have Judy Averill from Maple School and Dan Stern, who's part of our special ed team. And Dan works primarily with the families of our youngest students, and he saw this need and really kind of took the ball and went with it. So I'm going to defer to them. Do you want to talk about that, Dan?
Thank you for your question. The application had the photographs. Thank you for having us, everybody. So in order for a playground to be ADA compliant, there needs to be some ground level play structures, as well as the bars and the structure to be able to access the second level play areas need to be accessible for all kids. And currently the one over there is not. There's no on-the-ground play structures for kids. There's no ability for children who have trouble with mobility to be able to access the second-level structures. So we end up having almost like a play group on the side of the preschool structure with teachers running kind of social skills groups for kids who can't access, or they try and get kids to play with the children who can't access and try and navigate it that way, but it's just not sustainable for 3 years. So.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Any other questions, comments? Mayor, do you want to?
Sure. So I would just, to add on to actually what Mr. Stern and Superintendent Leclerc brought up around ADA accessibility, I would note that ADA gives a fine checklist of what is accessible and really kind of migrating or evolving from equal to equitable. I would want to point out that the efforts of this committee, as well as the school building committee and in existing facilities, as well as the park we talked about today, the park grant, that equitable access to any and all resources in our city must really go into the trend of universal design, so there is no appearance that there should or could be different, and that folks do not have to label themselves or declare themselves disabled or otherwise abled and get rid of this. And I really commend this independent project and tons of research by this group, and also the school building committee and park. Kestrel has been very helpful in that, and I would anticipate field trips from Easthampton Public Schools to our new park. Thanks.
Any other comments from the council? I'll open it up to the public. Anybody from the public have any comments on this particular issue? Okay, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Just one comment. The Community Preservation Act, which you know I'm a big proponent of, funds a lot of things. I am thrilled that they can fund this because, again, school department budget's tight, city's budgets are tight for capital improvement, and the fact that we can access these funds for certain projects legally, I'm just thrilled that we can do that for this. This is a great thing. So I hereby move that the City Council approve the following appropriation. The amount requested is $21,651 to be appropriated from the CPA Reserve Fund, $21,651 to be appropriated to the Maple Street Elementary School Playground, $21,651. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: for the purchase and installation of an ADA compliant playground structure, resilient surfacing and ramps at the Maple Street Elementary School.
Second.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I did have some questions about it at the committee level and had asked those questions, although it seemed like an appropriate expense. I did want to know the numbers on making sure that when we spent money that we would be able to go ahead and move this at a reasonable expense, something that wasn't 30%, 40%, 50% of the cost of the item, and there we are spending just that much more money and not getting the benefit of enjoying a new item. So I asked those questions. The answers came back. It looks like it's going to be about $2,500 to remove and another $2,500 to install. The capital item requested at about $22,000, almost $21,000, $22,000, reduced now to in the $18,000 level. It certainly seems appropriate. And when I hear that we don't have any ADA compliant playgrounds in the city, that gives further push to go ahead and let's get the ball rolling and get this out there. So I'm very much on board with this, and I appreciate the committee's hard work and getting us the answers on the cost of moving.
Great, thank you. Councilor Peak.
Yeah, I would just like to say, you know, Maple is in my precinct. One thing that I've noticed, actually long before I joined the city council, my precinct is very flat, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I noticed that there's a lot of people in my community who use wheelchairs, both adults and children. I think that it probably is pretty easy to traverse, and so I think this is great for the community, and I'm fully in favor of it.
Great. Okay, any other comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or noes? Motion passes. Councilor Rist.
The final CPA request is for dredging of our pond, White Brook and Broad Brook basins. Our Mashawanek Pond is a jewel of our city. To protect it, we have a committee, Mashawanek Pond Steering Committee, I forget the name of it. Anyway, it is a great committee, volunteers who fundraise constantly to keep this pond from losing its capability of being such a benefit to our city. In 1990, the engineers indicated that if two basins were put in at the tributaries White Brook and Broad Brook that feed the basins, sediment and silt and other items which were filling the pond at the time, which reduced the size of the pond greatly, would be protected for the future. They were required to be constructed, or the Army Corps of Engineers, which dredged the pond in 2009, would not pay for it, which was a fairly I think it was multi-million-dollar project. CPA helped fund that, and that dredging helped to improve the pond and greatly increased its lifespan. But now, after 19 years, these two basins are full, and they should be actually dredged earlier. But unfortunately, because of funding and other aspects of the project, they could not get this done. So they are asking for this funding to do it now. Just so everybody knows, we asked the question, the Department of Public Works is not tasked with this, does not have the necessary equipment necessarily, and given the infrastructure issues we have in the city that they are tasked with dealing with, the DPW director said they could not possibly take this on even if they had the expertise and equipment to do it. This has to be done by an independent contractor. We're hopeful that this will, when the basins are cleaned out finally, and it probably have to be done during dry weather, I believe, Paul, you said like the summer when it's less water is getting in there. We'll be able to go for another 10 years without having to dredge them again. Hopefully not, certainly not 19 years. There is some work that won't have to be done next time, like access roads, et cetera, that will be better built now so that we won't have to rebuild those. And what's really incredible is the Pond Committee donated $40,000 to this project out of the $301,000 cost. That's a lot of fundraising that they did, and it's incredible that they have that kind of funding available, but this is obviously very important. When we talk about what the CPA committee can do for our city, how we do the parks, making sure that pond is capable of continuing to be the jewel that it is something I'm glad we have a CPA that can fund it. Because I don't think the city, it would be very hard for the city to come up with $261,000. The CPA does approved it unanimously, and the Finance Committee also approved it 3-0.
Okay, any discussion from council? Anybody from the public like to speak on this?
We have Paul Nowak and Craig from Gary, I keep forgetting your name, from the committee. They have engineering studies if anybody's interested. But I also sent them all to you. So.
Okay, seeing none, entertain
Nobody from the public? Oh my God. Okay. Request is hereby made for the approval of the following appropriation. I move that City Council approve $261,000 to be appropriated from CPA Reserve from Open Space, $113,259.05. CPA Reserve Fund, $147,740.95. for a total of $261,000. To be appropriated to Neshonoc Pond Dredging Sediment Basins, $261,000. The amounts requested be used for the following purpose: for capital improvements to preserve Neshonoc Pond by rehabilitation through dredging and reconstruction of Broadbrook and Whitebrook sedimentation basins.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
Mr. President, I move the public hearing to be closed.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
CPA.
Back to property.
Okay, yeah, we'll head right back to property. Counselor Kwasinski.
Just to finish up on property very quickly, there was discussion with Planner Bag that had said that pay attention if you're interested in the dog park, because that subject was going to come to some meetings in October, around October, November. So that's something just to keep on your radar.
Okay.
And that concludes.
Thank you very much. I guess we'll start at the top.
Excuse me?
I missed it.
I don't know what he asked.
Okay. So we'll move to finance. Council Rist.
I have no report except to say that we will be meeting next week for the new business that was presented in the amended agenda, and make a first reading. The amount requested is $18,000 to be transferred from, these are insurance account numbers, and I'm going to say one's liability and one's for workers' comp, and I don't have the actual numbers of which one is which. $16,000 for one and $2,000 for another, to be transferred to different insurance accounts, $16,000 and $2,000. I don't have, this isn't as well detailed.
Okay.
To pay for additional costs for the fiscal year 20 workers' comp, I'd like to move that this be sent to Finance Committee for review.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. The mayor would like to make a comment on this, Mr. President.
Yes, I would, I'd just like to note to record that our ability to address this increased cost, which we know can happen every year, is from the liability insurance line, or is possible because we went out to bid and rebid all lines of that insurance, and did quite well. It's been, we don't know the last time we did that, and personnel led that charge, but it was very nice to have to not come back and ask for money out of reserve or account for that. So I just want to acknowledge the personnel department for doing that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to conclude, we will meet next Wednesday at 5 p.m., 5 o'clock, to discuss this. Probably a very short meeting, but
I will not be there.
Councilor Kwasinski will be there at 5 o'clock,
Wednesday,
the 11th.
I expect so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rist. Public Safety, Councilor Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. President. We met last night, but I want to start first in front of an motion. I want to ask for 90-day extension for pedestrian safety review.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for a 90-day extension of pedestrian safety review. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So last night we have a meeting and we started the discussion about all the ordinances that we have in front of us. We don't make any decision. We just start the conversation about every single ordinance that we have. And yes, that's what we did yesterday. We don't make any decision. We just set up the next meeting for October 1st, room 1 at 6 p.m. and that's concluded.
Thank you, Councilor. Appointments. Councilor Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President Derby. We had 2 appointments that we discussed this evening, mayoral appointments. The first was Deborah Lucnia, and I know Deb personally, so I'm so excited that she's going to be, hopefully, on the Community Relations Committee. She has been on the school committee as an elected school committee member from 2012 to 2017. She's been on the school building committee twice. 2009 to 13, and then 15 to the end. She's been in town 24 years. She likes that the community feels like a community in a small city. She has a marketing background, and she hopes that the CRC takes and produces tangible results. So I will make a motion to approve Deborah Lusnia, Community Relations Committee, with a term expiration of December 31st, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Councilor Zaret.
I just want to say I've had the pleasure of becoming friends and professionally acquainted with Deb Lusnia in my time working with the school ballot committee. There is not a kinder, more thoughtful person that I've met, and I think that the CRC is going to benefit greatly from her presence. So I'm very excited about this as well.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
Second appointment was Carol Vito to the position of tax collector in the city, term expiration December 31st, 2021. We received a memorandum from the mayor that Carol has been working for the city for 24 years. 21 of those years has been in the collections office, so this will be a new position for her as the tax collector. We voted in committee 2-0 to approve this, so I will make a motion to approve Carol Vito as the tax collector with a term expiration December 31st, 2021.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
We could have asked, we haven't. Did we put that rule in play yet?
I don't know what, I can't read your mind.
Oh,
Can't read your mind.
sorry.
I was just going to comment this with the ongoing search for a treasurer. We had the opportunity, the finance and audit team, to kind of look at the operations and what was best long term, and to take the collector position and pull it back out of the joint position. Carol has de facto been operating as the collector. When we brought in consultant and also talked to our external auditors, they commented on the strength of our collector's office and the job that Carol does, as well as Lori in that department. So, I want to acknowledge her work, ongoing work in the collectors, but it was really great to keep that internal, and the department is incredibly strong, well organized, up to date on policy and procedures. So, just wanted to speak to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you still have?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Sorry.
Slow your roll. So then we also have a new appointment that I would like to move to the appointment committee. It's a mayoral appointment for Austin Sanders to the Board of Public Works with the 12/31/2020. I'd like to move that to the appointment subcommittee in a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And although we did not discuss it, Councilor Gomez, are you good with the September 18th, 5:30 next meeting? Okay, so we'll set our next meeting on September 18th at 5:30 in the basement. And thus concludes.
Thank you, Councilor Coniff. And that brings it to me. Ordinance has still quite a few items that we're working on. We're continuing to work on these. I do want to set a public hearing for Chapter 2, Division 6, Board of Public Works, adding a new section 2.66, Powers and Duties, to the September 18th meeting. If someone, I would like to state that in form of a motion.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Aye. All right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
That's ADHD, guys.
Thanks, Councilor Riss.
Comes with senior.
That was good.
And we also have the bike ordinance, which we are going to set a public hearing for. We removed it at the last meeting. And I think we want to make sure that Barbara has all the finalized language before we set that. So just realize that that is probably going to be coming for the first meeting in October. And we will be meeting next Tuesday. And if you bear with me 1 second, I will tell you the date. It is the 8th at 5:15 downstairs. I'm really hoping I'm going to be able to make it because I am double booked that night. But if I can't, I feel that my fellow counselors can either take it or we can reschedule.
I don't believe next Tuesday is the 8th.
Sure, that's.
Yeah,
Isn't
It's
it?
the 10th.
It is.
Is it the 10th?
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
You must have been looking at a different.
Oh, it's October. Sorry. The 10th is our next meeting.
So you're not double booked?
No, I am double booked. It's next Tuesday. I'm double booked, but I am going to try to make it, and hopefully, if I have to leave early, I'm sure it's in capable hands. And we still have quite a few things. We're going to be also reviewing the wage theft ordinance as the new language comes in. We're going to be reviewing the cannabis equity applications as new information comes forward. We still have, other things that are on there that are relevant and we're working on. Doesn't look like there's only one thing I need to request an extension for, and that's going to be at our next meeting. We're going to vote on that, but I'll still, in the form of a motion, ask for a 30-day extension for cannabis equity applications.
Second.
Okay.
How many days?
30 days. I think that should be good. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. Councilor Rist.
Question for our clerk. If these amendments to the wage theft ordinance and the cannabis equity ordinance require a great deal of language changes, do we have to re-advertise?
I think well, especially the cannabis equity, that's a zoning ordinance. If it's substantially different than what the planning board has recommended, then
gotta
it should
start
go
over.
back.
Back to the planning board.
Well, I don't know how bad is it? It's not-
I would
it
like to
says it's
request that if you are going to put something together, that we have it for the packet, because people should be able to look at it.
Oh, yeah.
Councilor Zaret.
Yeah, I would say specifically for that one, I just anticipate there'll be some small language changes, but instead of bringing it to public hearing and introducing a number of amendments, I thought it was wiser to bring it to committee to.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So it won't need to be re-advertised.
Right.
But wage theft, what if that
No, because
has?
it's continuing, but I would like to request that it be ready for the packet at the next meeting,
So that's next Thursday.
next Thursday.
Right. And we're meeting next
Oh,
Tuesday.
so you mean to submit it? Yeah,
Right,
that's,
so
yes,
Counselor-
So
yes.
everybody has time to look at it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And we are meeting next Tuesday, so hopefully that should be fine.
right, and then I can also,
Councilor Zaret.
I mean, I know that the clerk also requested the bicycle,
Nothing on that one.
but you said that for October, is that
I
correct?
said, yeah, I'm going to hold
Right.
off setting a
Well,
public hearing for that.
We'll have language for that meeting,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, that concludes ordinance, which brings us to rules and government relations. Councilor Peak.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a series of overlapping vacations that prevented us from meeting in the month of August. We will be meeting next week, very spooky Friday the 13th at 5:30 p.m. To discuss.
Room 1 committee.
Really? On Friday?
That's
Well, we can't
President
get anybody
McCoy
to-
gets back
It's okay.
on Thursday,
I just
so that's the
wanted to
only day
double
that
check.
can work, and we wanted to have some of this stuff done by the next meeting, so.
I tried for a Banner Brewery, but he wouldn't do it.
I'm open to the concept, I just don't know if it is in our rules.
You're the chair.
So we'll have to conform.
You said 5:30?
5:30.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got two resolutions that we'll be discussing, one against the abuse of migrant children and one related to nuclear weapons. We'll also be discussing our proposed question related to the establishment of a municipal light plant. Given that it's a Friday meeting, we probably won't get to the language I'd submitted to realign the roles of the council committees, but we have time to address that in the month of October. So,
Do you not want that on the agenda for that night?
I mean, we probably aren't going to get to it.
Okay.
That's just my guess.
I won't put that one.
All right, awesome, thank you. And that concludes.
Thank you, Councilor Peak. Charter Review Committee, Councilor Rist.
I have a very important announcement. We're done. We did a lot of work. The packet is incredible. We have sent it off to the city attorney for review. He's got a lot of work ahead of him because it has extensive changes. A lot of the changes I commented to the city attorney are what we call housekeeping. Ambiguity, clarity, words changed, but every word is important. We have debates over commas. they all mean something. How future city attorneys and councilors will interpret the charter. So it's important we get it right. There are some major changes that we may have to meet again for if the city attorney rejects them. One is under the Department of Public Works and the Board of Public Works. There's some major changes we're requesting in there regarding terms of offices, etc. But we will not meet unless those changes require the committee to make a different recommendation to the council. I suspect it'll take the city attorney a month to get back to me with his final document, and I'll put it together with the city clerk and then send it to the council for review. I will send it in two forms. One, we have to do it as an act for the legislature, but I'll also send it as the marked up version so it's a little easier for the councilors to see what was the old language, what's the new language, etc. So we are done. There will be no further charter review committee meetings unless required because of the city attorney's request. We may need to meet with the city attorney. I'll talk to the mayor about that so we can meet to go over it if we have to. But I want to thank Councilor Gomez, Councilor Peak, Councilor McCoy for being on the committee. Your work was invaluable, and the other members of the committee, the community members, they did a great job and helped us get through it. So thank you very much.
Good.
We're not going to disband the committee yet, if that was your question.
Wow.
No, I forgot to say that. I saw your hand up.
That
I
was
said,
impressive.
no, we can't disband the committee because I may need to meet again.
Do you want to keep it on the agenda?
Yeah, and I probably won't have any report for the next couple meetings until I get something from him. Okay?
All right. Thanks, Councilor Rist. Appreciate it. Thank you, councilors, for your work on that. I don't think no old business. We've taken care of new business. Unless I see the mayor raising her hand.
If I could ask for a suspension of the rules to just make a quick announcement that's hot off the wire that I think that the committee would want. Two things, actually.
No rule against that.
Yeah, no rule against that.
All right. So one, September 14th, late to afternoon, we're thinking about 3:30, there will be an official ribbon cutting for Valley Bike Share at the Valley Bike Share station at Millside Park. So they're
14th?
Yeah, the 14th. So kind of there's the committee fair and then the actual concert. So in between, we'll have a ribbon cutting with the Valley Bike Share folks. We're hoping that the mechanical issues with the kiosks are fixed, and we are holding back $30,000 of that contract with Valley Bike Share because of lack of performance around kiosks. But they're working very hard. I'll just remind the council that as a part of this grant, we get 40 brand new e-assist bikes that will have like an E on the back saying Easthampton, that will primarily be based in Easthampton and be newer. Right now, it's recycled throughout the system. Tonight, the Board of Public Works got more information from Ty and Bond around wastewater, stormwater rate increases, how we will approach our stormwater plan, 5 years, $22 million, and what that may or may not look like, and options. For the city. It's wrapping up actually right now. The board has a couple of things to take under consideration. That said, we just got notification that we were awarded $68,700 from the Green Communities Division. It was a competitive grant, and it was a split between the $15,000 for the electric vehicle charging stations, and if you remember, I came before this board for the 25, so we're going to work with Eversource, make sure that's the money we need, and we'll proceed with the vehicle charging stations. We're hoping probably this spring. I don't know if we have enough time to do it before winter. spaces, charging stations here and charging stations at the mill, and I'll get more information about that charge and figure out. Yeah, I don't know. Charge to charge.
I understood that.
I'm tired. Yeah. So then we got $50,000 at part of the $68,000. $50,800 for wastewater treatment plant HVAC improvements. This is an item that is on that stormwater plan and kind of a strategy DPW and myself have been employing of, can we find grant money to kind of check any one of those projects off of that very long list. And we were successful with the HVAC improvements at the wastewater treatment plant. It's a lot of money and work that needs to be done down there, and this actually, one, is more efficient, but also it goes right to the health and safety of our employees down there. And we were thrilled that we got that through. The last one is $2,900 for the Love Field pump station and replacing the furnace. So Love Field pump station, again, this is an item on our stormwater book, and it helps us get further down the road. It's not the full cost of the replacement, but we feel we can find the extra money. Love Field is one of those stations where we go back and forth if we really need it or not. The furnace replacement helps a great deal. Our pump stations are very outdated and really just energy sucks. So this is a great use of it. So. And DPW, the director and myself will come at some point when we have a more definite structure and rate, just to explain what's going on with that plan. It took a while to get the further rate study down to look at different enterprise funds and costs to what's available to this.
Can you repeat the time for the bike share on the 14th?
So on the 14th, I think it's going to be about 3 o'clock.
Okay.
We have some conflicts, like with the state assistant secretary and like the overseer of bicycles, all things bicycles in the state, Chris Clutchman, who's already been out here a couple of times, would like to come out personally for ribbon cutting. And just the other people involved, including the bikes, we want to have like the new bikes on display and make sure we don't disrupt compete with the committee fair and different things going on down there. So I think it's as soon as we get a definite time, we will get that out I'll get it to Barbara.
Great.
So
Thank you.
that gets out.
Thank you.
Thank you for the extra time.
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
I'm sorry.